Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Don't say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues!
I have nothing to prove to you.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, and welcome to Citizen Dame, the podcast where we are all about the crazy best actress race of 2023. I'm Karen Peterson, joined by the amazing Lauren Humphries Brooks.
Hello. Yes, by the time people are listening to this episode, like we will know what's going on, like what happened.
We will. So this episode will either be a celebration or a commiseration because I don't know about you, Lauren, but I am all in on Michelle Yeoh this year.
We've talked a lot about, the different best actresses and everything. And I love Cate Blanchett. I definitely think that she deserves it for Tar. I also think that Michelle Yeoh deserves it for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I think Michelle Yeoh deserves it for like her entire body of work as well.
Yeah,
and
for just existing.
Yeah, for just like, and she's been such, as we are going to talk about today, she's been such an important actress in so many ways. And she's such a talented one that I would love to see her awarded for. Even though I admit that, like, if you ask me which film do you prefer, I prefer Tar. I think that Tar is a better film overall.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really difficult to compare their two performances because they're so very different.
Yeah, they are.
But that being said, I want Michelle Yeoh to win for all kinds of reasons. I think it would be fantastic if she did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So hopefully this is coming out with like, yay, Michelle Yeoh, Oscar winner.
Hopefully. We'll see. I mean, voting is in. The votes are done. No takebacks. Yeah. Whoever's gonna win, it's been chosen. We'll find out in about, I don't know, 36 hours or so.
Oh my God.
I know. At the time that we're recording this. But as Lauren pointed out, by the time you're listening, we already do know. So anyway, before we do get to our main discussion, Lauren, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
It is still too cold here. It makes me so sad. It's March. March in New York is always this threat of spring. It's just like spring is coming, but it's not here yet. And then like it snowed this morning and I was like, please stop. It's too cold out. So yeah, but it is supposed to get warmer as the week goes on, which I am pulling for. But March in the city is always just a constant rising of hopes and then a dashing of hopes. It happens every year too. I don't know why I keep hoping. I'm just like, maybe this year.
It's funny how there's certain weather things that happen around the same time every year and people always forget. Like here in California, we call it May gray for a reason, and people still are always so surprised in May when it's gray and gloomy, and it's just like we have a name for that, and we do it in June as well. It's June gloom, and yet people are always surprised. For us, the temperatures did tick back up a little bit. It's 50 degrees right now. I think it's supposed to get up into the 60s today, which is so nice considering it was down into the 30s just 2 weeks ago. And people that live up in the mountains finally got to start going home this week. So it's just been a crazy couple weeks. But last night I was actually doing an interview for a piece that I have coming in Variety this week. And the publicist that was connecting us was in New York, and it was, cold and sort of snowy, I guess. And then the person I was talking to is in Bali, and he's like, yeah, it's 10 in the morning on Saturday and it's already 88 degrees and really humid. I'm just like, this is just so funny talking to people like different parts of the world. And yeah, I love weather. Which is why I took meteorology in college instead of chemistry.
Well, and I'm from upstate New York, as we know, and actually, like, I am much happier to be in New York City than to be upstate at this time of year, because the most depressing months of the year in upstate New York are February and March, because of it's just gray. There's not even a hope, right? There's not even, like, in New York, in New York City, there's always the sense of, like, well, it's getting warmer. We're having 50-degree days, we're having 60-degree days every once in a while. So there is that hope of spring in March upstate, and except for, like, some really odd years. Yeah, it's just always like, it'll never end. It will just be snow and gray and wet and cold forever and ever and ever. And there is no sun. There's no such thing as the sun. This is just it. This is our life.
It's that line from Groundhog Day when Bill Murray's like, it's going to be cold, it's going to be gray, and it's going to last for the rest of your life, or whatever, however he says that.
Exactly. I always think of The Simpsons, that there's a joke about lousy smarch weather, and just like, yeah, smarch weather. This is exactly what it is. It's like any period between about, like, February, sometimes through April. It's lousy smarch weather.
Well, thank you all for listening to Weather Dames. We are gonna go into other conversations now. So let's talk about Michelle Yeoh. Or Yeoh, or no one can agree on how to pronounce her name, and I'm gonna look it up by tomorrow, because I need to know, because if she wins and I'm at the Oscars, I want to be able to get that right. Anyway, so I'm not laughing at the fact that everyone pronounces her name differently. I think that names are important and we should learn how to pronounce them correctly. I just apologize that I did not do that before this episode.
I had always pronounced her name as Michelle Yeoh, but now I realize that I don't have any particular reason for that. I think I've heard that.
I've heard both. I've heard both. So I've always said Yeoh.
We could always use the name that she's credited as with in Super Cop, which is Michelle Khan. So.
Yes. Yeah, she actually used a couple of different names in her early career. I believe. Well, Michelle Khan she used as in a couple of films. She also used Shi King Young. And yeah, anyway. Let's see. So, okay, before we get into the specific films that we want to talk about, what was the first movie that you remember seeing Michelle Yeoh in?
I think honestly that it was probably the James Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies. And that's the first time I can recall seeing her, although I honestly do not remember if I saw that film when it came out or anything like that. I would have been about 11, so that would make sense, I guess. But definitely, I think my strongest awareness of her was definitely Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I think that that's true for a lot of Westerners, at least. Like, the first thing that probably we really recognized her from, because Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was such a major thing in the West, definitely. I think that that's probably the one that a lot of us remember her from originally.
Yeah, same. The first one that I definitely did see was Tomorrow Never Dies, but she was not the main star of that movie. It's Pierce Brosnan, obviously. But yeah, when I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I definitely recognized her. And I remember there being a lot of conversation about her and how she'd had this long career in China and Hong Kong before crossing over to the United States and starting to do American films. But of course, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is not an American film. But yeah. And then it's like kind of that. It's interesting when international films do kind of cross over into mainstream American audiences. There's always going to be pockets of people who have appreciation for like like martial arts films from Asia or horror films from Scandinavia or, you know, whatever it is. But, you know, it's not that often. It's getting better, but it's not that often that an international film will just have the life that some of them do here in the United States. And Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was one of those. It was nominated for, or won 4 Academy Awards. It was nominated for several others. And it really, I mean, it just was a huge hit here in the United States.
Well, and I think that some of that has to do with Ang Lee, because he was already a very recognizable filmmaker in the United States. But yeah, I mean, there's always this tension, I think, and particularly in the 90s and the early aughts, so before streaming, right? And really even before DVDs or anything like that made a wider range of films more available to the general public. You would get films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon that you know do have recognizable stars in them. Chow Yun-fat has been around forever.
Yeah.
Michelle Yeoh has been around forever. Ang Lee definitely is a known filmmaker in the United States, beyond anything, you know, whether or not you paid attention to their careers elsewhere. So all of these people kind of already had at least a little bit of name recognition.
Yeah.
Before Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But yeah, it was one of those films that just sort of broke through for a lot of good reasons, I think. But it's just so seldom do those kinds of films, are they even made available in the United States? That's part of it. Like in 2000, how many of Chinese films or Hong Kong films were really widely available in American theaters?
Right. Yeah. I was curious, so I looked up the box office on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And first of all, American audiences already kind of loved Ang Lee because of a movie that we had just talked about last week, which was Sense and Sensibility, which he directed. He's done some other stuff too. But he had already endeared himself to American audiences, to the Academy, certainly, with some of those types of films. This was Taiwan's international feature film submission. And what was interesting was, this is really interesting for an international feature. Its total box office worldwide was almost $214 million. 60% of that, most of that came from the United States. It made $128 million here in the United States and 85 worldwide, which is unusual for an international film. It was released by Sony Pictures Classics, so that had a lot to do with it. But just an interesting little fact about that. So, okay, let's see. First of all, so we wanted to kind of run through. We chose 3 specific films, and then of course we'll talk about some others, like just kind of mention them. But we chose 3 specific films from her early career that kind of introduced different segments, I guess, of her career. And so the first one would be Yes, Madam from 1985. By the way, all 3 of these are part of Criterion Channel's 8-film package, Michelle Yeoh Kicks Ass. So definitely watch that. I'm working my way through it and it's a great collection. So, but yeah, so the first one that we're going to talk about is Yes, Madam. It's from 1985. And this was not her first film, but it was her first leading role. So it's pretty significant in her of. So Lauren, when did you just watch Yes, Madam for the first time, and what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I just watched Yes, Madam for the first time. I'd heard of this film actually because I followed a number of people on Twitter who were very much into Hong Kong cinema, and particularly talking about Cynthia Rothrock, who is kind of the Michelle Yeoh's co-star, co-lead. And this is the film that people like reference a lot. It's just like, well, why isn't this available? And I remember looking for it and being like, I couldn't even find a streaming, like a bad rip on YouTube or anything like that. And so not having this film available, I was like, well, I want to see this. Like, and there's some mixed mixed reviews of it and everything, and definitely it's a mixed film in a lot of ways, but having Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock on the same screen together is just fantastic. And so I was really excited when I saw that this was like the first film on the Criterion Channel's Michelle Yeoh collection. And I was kind of surprised that Criterion wasn't promoting that fact, because I was like, it has not been available. Like, I know because I've looked for it off and on. And because I've wanted to see it, and it's like, why are you not advertising this? Like, please advertise the fact that this film is now available, at least for Western audiences. I don't know if it's been available elsewhere in Hong Kong or something like that, particularly given the presence of those two women. It's a silly film. It is a deeply silly film in a lot of ways. Silly. And too much of it, as a few people pointed out, too much of it is taken up with like a comedic, kind of semi-comedic subplot involving, three idiots who wind up coming into possession of things that like the villains want. And so not enough time is spent with Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh. But what time we have with them is so awesome. And it's so cool to see the two of them fighting together alongside each other and like kicking dudes' asses. And the final fight sequence really is just one of the best showcases for the pair of them on screen. It is so cool. It is wild. It is so like 1980s also. The outfits, the shoulder pads, the hairstyles, everything. But it's just really cool to like actually see on screen in this kind of a film two women who are very much being presented as like, these are your badasses, right? These are your tough guys. These are the ones who are going to defeat the bad guys. So yeah, it's a very mixed film in a lot of ways. And I do think that we spend way too much time with three idiots, but the time that we do get with Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock is just fantastic.
I can't believe that you don't have more respect for a guy whose name is Aspirin.
It's just there. So I've now seen a number of films from this period of Hong Kong cinema, and some of them are really beloved. And and there's definitely, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I don't know if it's a me thing. I don't know what it is, but there is definitely a sense of humor that I do not appreciate in these films. And it's stuff like that. It's like, oh, his name is Aspirin. His name is like Tylenol and things like that. I just like, I don't, is this supposed to be funny?
Right.
or is it just dumb? Like, I don't know what I'm working with here, and I can't figure out how I'm supposed to respond to these characters. Because the film also slides into some real seriousness.
It does.
Like, suddenly it's just like, oh, this is like serious shit, There's a lot of tonal shifts that are just very confusing. And yeah, but honestly, some of this seems to be really typical of this period of Hong Kong cinema, so it doesn't surprise me, any of it. I watched some of the Lucky Stars films, some of which are a lot of fun, and some of them are painfully unfunny. So there's kind of a balance here. There's less sexism in this one than there are in some others, which is nice.
Yeah, I think that was something that I was surprised about. I wasn't sure going into this. I mean, I know she's like the star, and it's her and Cynthia Rothrock, these two lady cops, but I wasn't sure if this was going to be like they had to combat bad guys and sexism from their own departments, or if this was just going to be letting women just be badasses, and it's mostly that. So
they receive a great deal of respect, actually, from all of their male peers. Like, their characters are treated with respect, and there's not this sense of like, oh, you've got to prove yourself as women. Like, all of the men are like, yeah, she's a total badass and she's probably going to kill you.
yeah, it's like, get her in here because we need her. And that's the thing, is like, I getting to see these two women kicking ass, literally, and getting these incredible fight sequences. And as far as I understand, they did most of the fighting themselves, both of them. Like, a lot of that stunt stuff was these actresses doing their own work. which is kind of a hallmark of these films in general. But it's like, man, this is from the 80s and we still struggle with getting these types of movies and roles for women, 30-40 years later. It's it's very frustrating, but it's so much fun. And oh my gosh, that whole last, like you mentioned, the kind of the end action sequence that is just so incredible. It's so incredibly shot. And then just the way that it's choreographed and watching some of the stunts that they do is absolutely stunning. I mean, the last probably 15 minutes of this movie are worth the entire movie. And the silliness and the weird tonal shifts that, like, it all builds to this sequence that is so incredible that, I mean, I just was speechless watching it. I mean, there's a scene where Michelle's in a fight with this guy and he like kicks her, I think, and then she flips backwards, lands on her back on a railing, like on a balcony, and then she jumps up and starts walking on it like a balance beam and then just beats the shit out of him. I mean, I was just like, this is my favorite movie.
It's really impressive. Yeah, both of them are really impressive, and you do get to see the the style and the abilities of these two women. One of the things I love about these kinds of films generally is that they, unlike a lot of fight scenes now, you don't, like, Captain America or whatever, there's not a lot of quick cuts. You get to actually see, like, here is the speed at which these people are moving, here is what they're doing in a single static shot, right? And you do get like images like they're just like, Jesus Christ, you're bad. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And because, and sometimes it's also because of the way the Hong Kong industry worked. They did not care if people got hurt. There were times when people were actually like punching and kicking other people and people got seriously injured. Watch any of the outtakes from Jackie Chan films if you don't believe me. But as a result of that, I'm not necessarily saying this is a good thing, but as a result of that, you do get most of them are doing their own stunts. They're doing their own fighting. There isn't a stand-in coming in to replace them or anything like that. So you're actually seeing, for the most part, and every once in a while it changes, but for the most part, you're actually seeing these people showcasing what they're able to do. And that's just really impressive. And like you say, it's really cool to see women getting to do that.
Yeah.
And for, and there's some sexist posturing from the villains, but for the most part, it's just like, no, I'm just going to beat your ass. Like that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah, it's great. And part of the reason that she was able to learn this type of choreography and do the martial arts that she's able to do is because of she was a dancer from the time she was a child, and ballet specifically, and that really does help with being able to control those movements and have this really beautiful physicality that she is able to show, not only in this movie but in others too, the others that we're going to talk about even, where you can really see that ballet training and she brings not just this like amazing fighting, but she brings this beautiful grace to it too. So it just makes it that much more interesting to watch.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, most of the time they're not trying to hit each other, right? So it is like a dance. You've got to make it seem believable on screen, but you also don't really want to hurt the person opposite you. And I think that definitely stood her in good stead, and you can see it. And I like also, in watching the two of them together, that they have very different fighting styles and a very different approach to what they're doing. But it melds really well. Like watching the two of them, it's not like, there's no opposition really. It's let's show you what Cynthia can do. Let's show you what Michelle can do.
Yeah. Well, and I was just curious about Cynthia, so I just wanted to look her up. And it's interesting because Michelle's background, like I mentioned, was in ballet. Cynthia's was in martial arts and athletics. So they are coming to it from different backgrounds too. So I just,
Cynthia Rothrock was like 7 black belts in
Yeah.
various martial arts. Like she really is a fantastic female martial artist, and I've read about her before. And again, a lot of her films, she worked primarily in the Hong Kong film industry, and a lot of her films just aren't available in the West. They're not available in Western dubs. They're really difficult to obtain. So having something like Yes, Madam is really good, also to kind of remind us that there were other women out there who were doing something just as spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just not getting the respect. So something that I thought was kind of funny when I started watching Yes, Madam. So Michelle was only 23 when she did this movie, and you can definitely see the Michelle that we recognize today, but she's such a babe in this. It was just like, oh, she's so young, and she just like kind of still has that like baby face. So
She does.
it was cool. It was just like, oh, this is such a time capsule of a movie. So
she's got such a presence, though.
mm-hmm.
And I think that and this is a presence that runs throughout her career, that like in her later films as well, that even at the age of 23, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, yeah, she walks in and she commands a room. And one of the things that I also noticed, not so much in this film, but in some of the other films, is how short she is. She's not a tall woman at all.
Yeah,
but she always seems tall to me because of this presence, because she's very like, she captures the camera at some level, right? And it isn't just like because she's attractive or anything like that. It's because she has this power that is very authoritative. Like you believe her when she says something, you're just like, yes, ma'am. Like, absolutely, I will do that.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was definitely born to be a star. So another film that has just incredible action, we wanted to talk about the Police Story. Is that what it? Yeah, Story 3 Super Cop.
Yeah, I think in the United States it was released as Super Cop, and so there's some confusion because then there's also Super Cop 2,
right,
which I believe stars Michelle Yeoh, but like Jackie Chan has a really brief kind of cameo in it, but it's pretty much about her.
Yeah, so Police Story 3 was the third for Jackie Chan. It was the first for her, I believe, but then they had kind of it had kind of its own sequel. So yeah. So this one came out in 1992. And it's Jackie Chan teaming up with Michelle Yeoh. They are out to get a Chinese drug czar. He's from Hong Kong and she's from China. And they both have the same goal. And they end up pretending to be siblings at one point, which is actually pretty funny. But it's another one of those like badass, like it's funny, it's got a lot of good humor in it, but also again with some serious stuff too, but mostly it has just incredible action, and it culminates in another just really incredible action sequence that it just, I mean, I just loved it so much. So what are your thoughts, Lauren?
Well, I've always liked Jackie Chan films. I admit, like I think that most of us do, because that combination of humor and actually serious fighting and serious action is so enjoyable to watch. And this one, I remember seeing it when I was a kid. I don't remember how old I was, but definitely like I remember renting it and like and we rented it because it was a Jackie Chan film, but then Michelle Yeoh was there. Yeah, it's one of the things, again, you talk about those differences in fighting styles, is that Chan is very much a comedian. Like that part of his style is being funny. And doing these really spectacular stunts and these spectacular physical performance, but often kind of mocking it, being a clown about it, etc. And Yao in this role in particular is much more serious. She's much more kind of centered in herself and takes herself much more seriously. But the fight scenes where they fight together, right? And they don't ever square off against each other, really. But where they fight together again, you get that kind of going back and forth where the two of them obviously work well together. And you can kind of see the timing, you can see the different styles and things like that. And it's a lot of fun. Like, it's a fun movie. It still has kind of those elements of ridiculousness, but I think that it's a much more polished film in a lot of ways than, like, definitely than some of Jackie Chan's earlier films, definitely than some of Michelle Yeoh's earlier films, and feels almost more Hollywoody. There's a Hollywood element to it.
Yeah.
With some of the, particularly with some of the bigger things, so like the helicopter chase sequence, and we're going to land a helicopter on a train, and we're going to jump the motorcycle onto the top of the train. Like, all of that stuff feels it's much bigger. It's a bigger thing than just like the individual down on the ground fighting. But you still get that. So it strikes a really nice balance. And I think that it proves, also that Michelle Yeoh could hold her own against someone like Jackie Chan, and also be respected by him. And he's notoriously sexist. But apparently, like, she broke through that a little bit.
Yeah. She jumps a motorcycle onto a moving train. Like, oh my gosh, I had to back that up a couple of times and watch it. This was my first time watching Super Cop. I had never seen it before. And I was so glad that we chose this as one of the movies that we were going to talk about, because I just enjoyed every minute of it. It's so much fun. The fighting and the action are incredible, and because one of the things that really does make Jackie Chan, like you mentioned, the combination of the physical fighting, but also this humor. And one of the things about that he does so well is incorporating just whatever's around him. Like, I've seen him beat up a guy with a ladder by jumping in, using it. I don't know. It was amazing. But like, he'll just use kind of whatever's available to him, and that makes it so fun. And so in this case, Michelle does a little bit of that too. Not to the same extent, because obviously he's like the star of the movie, but I think this really is both of their movie in so many ways. And just watching the two of them play off of each other, watching the two of them deal with this case, which I also found it just kind of fun. This is 5 years before Hong Kong was leaving British control and reverting back to China. And they talk a lot about that. Like, that's kind of a sort of like underlying point of this whole plot, and why China and Hong Kong are working together, and kind of who benefits in the end when the good guys win. And I just thought, oh wow, yeah, another kind of time capsule piece for a different reason, because this is 5 years before that's going to happen. So so it includes some political commentary in addition to its humor and its good cops beating up bad guys, and but it also makes way for just some really funny moments, like when Jackie Chan's character is supposed to be deep undercover and runs into his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And like, oops. And then oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and then she has to pretend to be a prostitute so that he doesn't get caught.
Yeah.
But at first she doesn't realize that that's what's going on. So yeah.
Poor Maggie Cheung is just like, I've been glad to see her in some other films that aren't Jackie Chan films, because all of the police story films, she's basically just like the dupe. And she's like, yeah, I don't know why she stays with this man. Like, because she just keeps on being humiliated. But I was going to say something about the action, and now I can't. Oh, no. Well, one of the things about this combination of kind of the action, the physical comedy, is stuff like that, is that you get these little moments of slapstick, right? Where that is just like, Three Stooges or Buster Keaton kind of thing. And Yeoh herself, I think, pulls it off really well. She is able to kind of meld with that when she pretends to be his sister. initially, and like he's having to navigate, like, first of all, he has no idea what the fuck is going on half the time. And she's like, oh yeah, yes, I'm your sister. It's like, oh yeah, my little sister.
He's not the best undercover cop.
No, he's really not very good at being undercover, but he's apparently convincing enough. Like, but so, and then the entire sequence where they're at the restaurant and there's like them attempting to remain undercover but also not hurt any innocent people is a really interesting, or not hurt any of the other cops who don't know that they're undercover, is a really interesting kind of interplay. It's really well set up. One of the things that I like about a lot of Jackie Chan films is exactly that they set up, the best ones really do set up the situation very effectively so that it's believable as part of the plot. And then you get this fantastic set piece and an extended fight sequence or chase sequence where the lead characters are trying to do one thing, the bad guys are trying to do another, and then there's another group that is trying to do a third thing, and they're all sort of having to navigate each other. And the good guys are, of course, attempting to be certain that no one gets hurt, without, revealing the fact that they are in fact police officers. And it's really well done, and it's very well balanced.
Yeah. One thing about that whole ending sequence that was a little bit difficult for me was having to acknowledge the fact that Mission Impossible kind of ripped it off a little bit.
Well, I have a lot of things that Mission Impossible is ripped off, Karen.
Well, some of that is intentional homage and stuff, but this was like, oh. Anyway. So from Super Cop, Michelle Yeoh goes on to do the Heroic Trio, which is also, I believe, on the Criterion Collection. Is it?
Yes, I watched it recently. Now, when we said that Yes, Madam is kind of silly, Heroic Trio is just fucking bad shit. Like, it's like a live action Ninja Turtles cartoon almost. Like, that's the closest I could come to it. Like, it's got these extreme villains and extreme heroes. Yeah, so Michelle Yeoh plays a character called the Invisible Woman, who literally has an invisible cloak that she like hides herself. And then Maggie Cheung is in it, who's like the thief catcher, and she rides a motorcycle and like at one point basically launches herself through a window by lighting a barrel of dynamite on fire. It's that kind of thing. It's this really ridiculous action. There's a scene where like a sentient skeleton takes over Michelle Yeoh's body. And like amazing. Fights the other women and everything. It's wild. Like, I do recommend the Heroic Trio just for its batshitness, and it does have some great fight sequences and really cool to watch these three women together and everything. But it's just, it's not like, it does get serious at times, but I'm just like, this is comic book. Like, it's, yeah, like I say, live action Ninja Turtles cartoon. That's what it feels like. That's as close as I could come. I'm certain there's a better explanation for what that is. Power Rangers, like, it's that kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm just looking at what else is on the Criterion channel. So after Yes Madam, there was Royal Warriors the next year, Magnificent Warriors, and then there was Super Cop, then the Heroic Trio, then a sequel to the Heroic Trio, Executioners.
Yeah, which I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, and then The Stunt Woman in 1996. She also, in that time, teamed up with Jet Li. She did Tai Chi Master, which I feel like was on TV a bunch when I was younger, like late 90s or something. I don't know. And then, like we mentioned, she does Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997, which was her first big American film. And then that just kind of opened a lot of doors for her. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon comes out in 2000. And it does star Chow Yun-fat, Ziyi Zhang, and is directed by Ang Lee. Is nominated, like we said, it wins 4 Academy Awards: Best Cinematography, Original Score, Art Direction, and Best Foreign Language Film. And it was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, costume design, film editing, and original song. So it was not nominated for any acting awards, even though it definitely should have been. And I know a lot of people, I remember that Oscars, and a lot of people thought Chow Yun-fat was going to be nominated. Watching the film, even all these years later, I just don't know how he and Michelle, neither of them were, but that's just how the Academy rolls.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's because they're not speaking English.
Yeah,
I think that if the same film was made in the English language, they would have been nominated.
I think they would have been nominated, and I think the film would have won Best Picture. It would have won a few other. Yeah.
Because there is still and there's definitely an Academy Award bias against non-English speakers. You know, beyond issues even of race or of ethnicity, you know, I think that it's pretty indicative that one of the films that Michelle Yeoh's the film that Michelle Yeoh has been nominated for is one in which I believe she does speak some Chinese in it, but she also speaks a lot of English. And it's much more of an English language film than Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is entirely in Chinese.
Right. Yeah. Well, and this is also 2001, and the Academy since about 2016 has really made a concerted effort to expand their membership. And so there is a growing international contingent of the Oscars. And so now we are seeing more expansion into including non-English speaking roles, except that most of them are still European. So when we see people getting nominated, it's still like French or Italian, you know, it's not.
Yeah.
We still don't have Asian and Spanish speaking countries being equally represented. So, yeah. So, okay. The thing about I mentioned to you before that I have not seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in a long time. I've seen it. I've seen it multiple times. But I have not seen it in a while. Right. Like you say, I haven't seen it, and people immediately think, you've never seen Crouching Tiger. Yes, I have. I just didn't get a chance to rewatch it this week because it's been busy. Okay. But so I can't speak really coherently about the details of the film, so I'm going to leave that to you. But I think some of the reasons that it really captured American audiences the way that it did is because of this sort of fantasy, magical realism elements, and that it really just had this beautiful action mixed in with a story that was really just a beautiful, you know, romantic sweeping adventure too. So it was the kind of movie that because it incorporates all the things that people love about movies, I think that's really why it did as well as it did with audiences here in the United States. But that being said, what are some of the things for you, having recently revisited this film, that you think continue to make this a movie that resonates with people now?
Well, I think that first of all, like as you point out, that combination, the magical realism element, I think is really important, and it accomplishes something that's very difficult to do in blending the magic elements, right, without real clear explanation. It's not like there's not a lot of exposition about how are these people able to fly, right? But they can, and the film kind of, it builds to it a little bit, but it integrates that and the fighting really well. So you can see how they use this ability to, like, not fly, but sort of walk on air or jump, etc., right? And it works really, really well. It's not so spectacular that, like, we refuse to accept it. It doesn't, like, come in. It's very well balanced. I don't know how more to describe it. They integrate these elements really well. And so you're more willing to accept it, I think. And it does give the film kind of an ethereal quality. A sensation that, like, you know, this is taking place in a real historical period, but it's also taking place outside of it. So there's like the fairy tale like aspect to it, the fable like aspect. It's also very straightforward in a lot of ways. The whole point of contention initially is this sword that belongs to the Chow Yun-fat character, Lee Moon-bae, and that he tries to basically get rid of, give away, and then is stolen. And there's this whole thing about like who has the right to possess this sword, who has the right to use this sword, and then there develops out of that the issue of Jen, who's the Zhang Ziyi character, and her desires, and kind of, you know, how much we are asked to sympathize with her, but also she's a spoiled little brat, right, at the same time. And so it's so straightforward in a lot of ways, but manages to put in all of this complexity in what is a fairly simple story. So it's really, I think that at the end of the day, it's a really well balanced film. I think that speaks to pretty much universal audiences. You don't have to know a lot in order to follow everything, but it's still very embedded in its culture and very embedded in its characters. And that's one of the things I really like about it. It was interesting rewatching it. And it's been a long time since I've seen this movie. But in rewatching it, it kind of hit home to me how so much of this is about women's place in the world and in this particular culture, and where women are supposed to exist. And in this interesting way, the Michelle Yeoh character is, on the one hand, she has all of these skills and all of these abilities, but it has closed off a portion of life for her. And there's this whole backstory about her, you know, being in love with Lee Moon-bae, but also having had a relationship and been engaged to his best friend, who was then killed. And so there's this unwillingness for the two of them to actually cross that line to be with each other. And then you've got Jen, who is, on the one hand, this exceptionally skilled martial artist who's kind of learned in secret and has been in love with this young bandit, Lo, who I just absolutely adore. And but so all of the female characters have this interplay that's going on between them about the traditional role of women, the role of women as they want it to be, this whole idea of freedom, of being free to make your own choices, but also the consequences of those choices. And that's one of the things that the Michelle Yeoh character keeps on sort of trying to say to Jen, is that making the choice to be a warrior, making the choice to go a different route, does mean that you are closing off in this society. It means that you're closing off yourself from love, from having a family, all of those things. And that's kind of the choice that has to be made. And she sort of pressures Jen in a lot of ways to go back, right? Go back to your parents, go back to your home. And I think that it's very easy to kind of read her character as being this sort of reactionary or more conservative element. But part of what she's doing is she's expressing her own longing, the things that she has not had because of the world that she has to exist in, and because of the choices that she's made. So it's a really interesting interplay, and I think that it does very well also in building these characters as there being no real villain. Even Jade Fox, who's the closest you can really come to a villain in this film, herself she's been denied everything. She's poor, right? So this girl that she has kind of marshaled along and helped and taught has hidden things from her. She hasn't been allowed to study at the Wudang school, so she's not been allowed, because she's female, so she's not been allowed to learn traditionally. And her anguish and anger comes out of all of that. And so she's not, even though she is a villain, I guess, she's not a total villain. You understand why she is the way that she is, and how, for especially all of these women, there are pieces of the world that are closed off to them in ways that it's not closed off to men. And they don't have many choices that they can make that are going to give them everything that they want. So yeah, it's a beautiful film. I really encourage people, if you haven't seen it in a while, to go back and watch it. Because it's, first of all, the fighting is fantastic. Like, you know, just some of the speed and the abilities of these people are just remarkable. But the film itself, beyond fight sequences, is so beautiful in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, and another example of the actors doing their own fighting, like
Yeah.
almost all of the fight sequences are the actors doing it. Those aren't stand-ins, it's not CGI. When they use CGI, it's to like remove the wires and cables and things that are holding them up to accomplish these beautiful kind of flying sequences, but the actors do pretty much do their own stunts throughout. So um which is, I really think, I mean, there are certain things that you definitely want stunt people to get involved, but I think that it really does lend it, like those actors being willing to do these things really does make the experience so much more immersive and engaging, because you don't have to have these like far away shots and things that kind of hide that it's not really the character, that actor. You just can do a lot more when people are willing to jump in and do their own stunts. So yeah. Plus it's just more examples of Michelle Yeoh being a badass.
And she does have
Oh my
like a
gosh.
couple of the best fights.
Mhm.
Her and Shang-Chi have two of the best fights, I think, in the entire film.
Yeah.
It's just between the two of them, and they're so important, right? And this kind of battle between them is so important. But the speed and the use of different weapons and the use of the environment, like all of it is it's remarkable to watch. Like sometimes I'm just like, wow, human beings are amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. So all three of those films are available on the Criterion channel right now, along with five others, like we mentioned. So definitely go and check them out. It is I was telling someone the other day, like a month of the Criterion channel, if you don't have a subscription, and we are not being endorsed by them, they're not sponsoring us, but um they should, but they don't.
I was gonna say, though they should.
Yes, but it's $10.99 for 1 month, and you get 8 awesome Michelle Yeoh movies. So that's just a little over $1 a movie if you watch nothing else. But you can't go onto the Criterion channel and not watch other things because there's so much stuff. It's such a great, it really is such a great channel. So they really should, they really should be sponsoring the show. Anyway, so after Crouching Tiger, we're not going to go deep into any of these, but I just kind of wanted to kind of recap the journey of Crouching Tiger to today, where we can now say Academy Award nominee, hopefully we can say Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh. And so after Crouching Tiger, she does Memoirs of a Geisha, which had a set of controversies, but
issues, which understandable. I remember when that
Very
film
much.
came out and there was all this conversation. I was like, this seems like a bad idea.
Yep. But also, another film that it got a bunch of Oscar nominations and won a couple of things. And so it's just more of like, I'm not defending the very definite blinding issues with Memoirs of a Geisha, but it was another example of Asian film and Asian performers being acknowledged and recognized by American audiences, even though, again, being shut out of acting consideration in that case. But after that, she does Sunshine, which is a great Danny Boyle film. I love that movie. It's a futurist. Have you seen Sunshine?
I have, a long time ago.
Yeah. It's so funny because I didn't know anything about the movie. It came out in 2007. And it was just this one day. I had just moved back to California, and like all my friends were busy and like just all the time. I was just spending a lot of time by myself, and I was going to a lot of movies by myself at this point. And there was this one day I was just like, it's a Wednesday afternoon. I have nothing to do. What's playing at the theater? So I looked up the movie times and I see this title and I was just like, what is that? I hadn't seen any marketing for it. I hadn't heard anything about it. Didn't know anybody who was in it. And I looked it up and it's like Cillian Murphy, Chris Evans. I didn't care about at that point, but now I have a different opinion. But Michelle Yeoh was in it. I'm trying to think who else. There's anyway, great cast, and it was directed by Danny Boyle. And so I was just like, oh, what the heck, I'll go. So I went. It's like 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, and I had that entire theater to myself. I was the only person there, and so I got like a private screening for $8. And I loved that movie. It was so good.
Rose Byrne is in it.
Rose Byrne, yeah,
Rose Byrne, Michelle Yeoh, Benedict Wong,
Mhm. Cliff
someone
Curtis.
else. Oh, Mark Strong.
Mark Strong,
is
yeah.
also in- yeah.
Yep. Good movie. It was written by Alex Garland, who I definitely enjoy more than you do.
I do remember liking Sunshine. I honestly don't remember that much about it, except that this was well made. Like,
yeah, it's one of those. It's a single like limited location movie because it's this group of people who basically the sun is dying, and so the earth is freezing. And so Cillian Murphy plays this like nuclear scientist who figured out how to construct a bomb big enough that they can basically reignite the sun, is what they're trying to do. And so they're in the middle of this journey to get there, and then something goes wrong with their ship. They're the second crew to attempt this. The first one never made it, and no one knew what happened to them. And they pick up a distress call from that other vessel. And so they have to make the decision. Do we go like find out what's up with them, or do we just continue with our mission? And so then things happen. So it's a fascinating film, and it's really good, and such a great it's really fun because none of these people were really big stars at the time that it came out. So I mean, Cillian Murphy was kind of on the rise, Chris Evans was kind of on the rise, but none of them were huge stars yet. And so it's really fun to go back and watch this and see them and see kind of the youth, but it's also just a good story. So let's see. So she also did some voice work. She did some like video game things. She did the sequel to Crouching Tiger, which was sort of Destiny, and she joined the MCU in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And then 2018, Crazy Rich Asians, and she gets to play the awesome, badass, super intimidating mom Eleanor. And we have talked a lot about how much we love Crazy Rich Asians. Mm-hmm. So we don't need to dive into that one again, but watch that if you haven't. Seriously, just what are you doing? Go watch that movie. And if you haven't,
she is so good in that too.
She is.
Yeah. She
is. I love that movie so much. She also did Last Christmas, so she reunited with Henry Golding for that one, and that's directed by Paul Feig. And also a delightful, charming movie. Do not let the haters tell you not to watch it, because it's perfectly sweet and charming, and I love it. And her character in that, she's not the star. She plays Emilia Clarke's boss, who owns this Christmas store because she loves Christmas, and she calls herself Santa, and it's just so delightful.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh, really?
I know.
Oh, I love it so much. She also did TV. She was on the Star Trek Discovery series. And she came back into the MCU in a different character in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And maybe a different character. Maybe it'll end up being the same character. Who knows? Anyway, and then that.
I honestly have not seen the second Guardians of the Galaxy. So when you said she was in that, I was just like, what? and there's like, but isn't she also in Shang-Chi? I was like, oh, okay. See, at this point, I've said it before, at this point, I have no idea what's going on in the MCU. Like, I have no fucking clue. At some point, I'm going to watch Wakanda Forever just because I liked the first one. But I have no doubt that at some point, I'm just going to be like, what the hell? I have no idea what's happening. No clue. I don't know who these people are. Who are they? Where did they come from? Why? They're like saying things that sound really important, but I don't know what that means.
Well, I enjoy all the MCU movies, and I don't apologize for it.
I'm not saying that you should apologize for it. I'm just like, I don't know at what point I lost track of what the hell was happening.
Yeah.
But I've completely lost it. I do not know what's going on anymore. And people will say things like the whole Ant-Man thing. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's
like,
the thing.
I literally
Like if you don't
know.
yeah, like if you don't keep up with them, you definitely do lose track. At this point, the movies are rewarding people who have stuck with all of them. So, I mean, I think that it's not correct that these movies only exist to set up the next movie. I think there are definitely elements that, are going to be tied in future installments every time, but that's not what the entire plot focuses on. Each of these movies does have its own plot. It's just also including elements that we will see again. So you can watch even the recent Marvel movies, you can watch any of them and follow the plot of that movie. They're just going to be references and things that you won't necessarily know, or characters you might not understand how they connect. So that's what you're missing. So, but Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is great, and it's actually kind of a completely standalone MCU movie. It really doesn't reference the other movies at all, other than like a couple of little tiny things that have nothing to do with the plot of the movie. So
yeah, I did really like that one, and that was, it might be the last MCU film I've seen. No,
you saw Thor: Love and Thunder.
Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah, Thor: Love and Thunder, I think, is the last MCU film I've seen. I've admittedly completely lost it on the Spider-Man films. Don't know what's going on there. I don't think I've seen any Ant-Man movies, like the actual just Ant-Man, not the ones that were used with the Avengers. Haven't seen those. Have not seen Wakanda Forever yet, although I do want to watch that just because. Yeah. So some of this is definitely on me, but at the same time, I'm like, you're saying things that apparently make sense, but they're words. Sense. They are words to me. Like good, yay, no, bad. Who the fuck is that person?
Yes.
Well, so did this, and then it's actually his father. I was like, what does that mean?
So where I want to kind of end this conversation is specifically on Michelle Yeoh, is with Everything Everywhere All at Once. And again, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this movie, but to me, even though I believe that she should have been nominated a couple of times before, she should have been nominated for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I think she should have been nominated for supporting actress for Crazy Rich Asians. But I think that there's something about Everything Everywhere All at Once that really does feel like her entire career has been building to this movie, because it includes the martial arts and the physicality and the badass fighting. It includes the heartfelt emotion and these really beautiful moments, not only between her and her husband and the various iterations of what that relationship could have looked like, but especially this beautiful mother-daughter relationship, and even a daughter and a father, because she has complicated relationship with her father, who does not approve of anything she's done in her life. So the film itself in so many ways feels like the culmination of everything in her career has been building to this movie. So in a way, it's kind of fitting that this is where she ends up getting her long overdue Academy Award nomination.
Yeah. It's a complicated film, and I think that you're right. One of the things that we haven't really mentioned as we were talking about this, we talked a lot about her fighting abilities, but she really is a fantastic actress as an actress, right? And I think that's one of the things that you especially see in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where she builds a character, like, and we get that in Everything Everywhere as well. Where you feel a myriad of emotions about this character. This is a complex human being that has a past and has a future, all of those things. And for someone that doesn't emote a great deal, right? There's not an emphasis on, like, her bursting into tears or breaking down in laughter or anything. She gives so much emotion to her roles, even to simpler roles like the film, like in I was about to say Police Story, and into things that are more complicated, like Everything Everywhere. There's a reality, I think, to the way that she the life that she gives her characters. You feel that she's really invested in them. And she is Michelle Yeoh. And I think that Everything Everywhere has all of those things that are attached to her, right, as an icon in a lot of ways. But she also is playing a part, and that part really comes through.
Yeah. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of her. The day after the Oscars, she's heading on a plane to go film Wicked. She'll be Madame Morrible. She's going to be joining the Avatar franchise. Good, great.
Why? Let them go.
I don't know. And we will also soon be seeing her in Kenneth Branagh's next Hercule Poirot film, A Haunting in Venice. So, yep, that's gonna be fun.
That just makes me happy.
Yep, especially if like I'm not sure how they're changing the story, because this is supposed to be based on Halloween Party.
Yeah.
And so I'm not totally sure how they're changing the story, and I'm not sure which character she'll be playing, but if she plays the one I think she is going to play, then that's going to be so much fun. So anyway, so yeah, lots more Michelle Yeoh to come, and hopefully more awards in her future. So yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap up this part of our discussion. Was there anything else you wanted to mention, just in brief, about anything else you've been watching or want to watch?
I've been pretty much watching Michelle Yeoh films. I think I watched Police Story, and then I watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. What else have I been? Oh, well, I mean, into the the fantastic physical performances. Also on the Criterion Channel is tons of Buster Keaton movies, both shorts and feature-length films. And if you've not watched any Buster Keaton, or you've only seen kind of the bigger films like The General or Sherlock Jr., definitely go check those out. He has some amazing performances. And talk about someone who just like puts his entire body into his work and risks his life on numerous occasions. It is amazing he did not just like break his head open at some point.
So true. So true. I've seen a couple of things that are out this weekend. By the time this airs, I will also have seen 65, which is the new Adam Driver movie. But I haven't seen it yet. But I saw Champions, which is the new Bobby Farrelly movie with Woody Harrelson. I had mixed reaction to that movie. I think it has a lot of problems. I was actually originally going to write the review of it. And when I saw the movie, I was just like, I don't know how to write this review in a way that doesn't, I don't know, because it's not that I think people shouldn't see the movie. It's just that I don't think that it accomplishes quite what Farrelly probably wanted to. It's basically it's an adaptation of a Spanish film from I think 2018, 2019, about this basketball team. Woody Harrelson he ends up with a DUI, and he's coaching a J League basketball team, or he's an assistant coach on a J League basketball team. He ends up with this DUI, and in order to avoid jail time, he accepts community service instead, and ends up coaching a Special Olympics basketball team with a group of intellectually disabled players, all of whom are absolutely delightful human beings. And I would just love to have gotten to spend one day on that set hanging out with that cast, because they are so just fun and charming, and I bet hilarious. And so it's like there are things about the movie that I think, yeah, this is good, people should watch it. But also I think overall it's Bobby Farrelly, who is not great at the sensitivity. And yeah.
I was going to say, all of that sounds great until you note that it's a Bobby Farrelly movie.
Right. Now, he was best known in the 90s for movies like Dumb and Dumber and oh my gosh, I'm just blanking on everything he ever did. He did Shallow Hal, he and his brother Peter. And they've kind of split up, and they're going separate. They're doing their own projects now. They're not working together anymore. And both of them are trying to do more like grown-up movies, and
films.
right,
for adult human beings.
Exactly. and I think that there's some interesting things about that. I have a lot of opinions about Green Book. We do not need to rehash those. That's his brother's movie. But with Champions, I think his heart is in the right place, and I think he's really trying to do a good thing with like showing that people with these intellectual disabilities are capable of everything that anybody else is, and that we need to stop treating them like they're incapable, or that that they don't understand humor, and that different things. So I think that's he's trying to communicate that, but I think that there are some choices made in this movie that end up kind of accidentally being a little bit insensitive. um I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt there. I don't know if he deserves it or not.
Yeah,
but
you sound like you're giving him the benefit of the doubt. You're just like, it's being a little insensitive.
but I really think that he's not intending to. I think it's just I think it's just he's a guy who doesn't really know how to get it right. I think that's what it is.
this in some of my other work, I feel like I've said this to some people. It's like, I think I know what you're doing. I don't think you're getting it the way that you need to.
Yeah. But so I mean, it's like, it's not a bad movie. It's actually kind of sweet. It's actually very sweet in a couple of places. It was just okay. And ultimately I came down to, I didn't want to write a negative review of this movie, because I don't think this is a movie that deserves that. So, but I also couldn't write a glowing one either. So I ended up just like, you know what? I'm just going to tell people, go see this if you want to. If it interests you, go watch it. Make up your own mind. I mean, I already should anyway, but yeah. So that's Champions. And then the other one that's out this weekend is Scream 6. And I will say that I think it's better than Five Cream. Overall, just as a movie, which I rewatched that again. I've watched it a couple of times because I'm like, what am I missing on this movie? And I still just think Five Cream is just eh. But so Scream 6 is better as far as being a scary movie. I think it does some really awesome kill scenes and just general like scary sequences. But the plot and the like reveal of who Ghostface is this time was so obvious from the beginning. As soon as you meet certain characters, you're just like, okay, I know where we're going with this. I know exactly what this entire plot is. And then I spent the whole movie being annoyed that the characters could not figure it out. Because it was so obvious. They were saying the answer without realizing they were saying the answer.
That's really unfortunate, because one of the good things about most of the other Scream films, and I think I would include Five Cream in this, is that it's unpredictable. That you can look at them and go like, I can figure out how a number of different people could be the killer, or the killers, right? Because we get kind of prepared for that after the first film. But none of them were ones where I was like, it's that person, and then it turned out to be that person, at least on my first viewing, right? Yeah. And I think these films are not really about who the killers are necessarily, but you need to have at least a little bit of that question mark.
Yeah. It's throughout. More about the motives in each case. And so for me, it's like every one of the movies before this one, I've been able to guess who the killers were, but not guess why. It's just more like, oh, well, that's probably who did it, but even then I haven't been able to fully guess. Because most of these movies have more than one killer, the exception being Scream 3. And so it's like in the first movie, I was just like, oh, it's totally Billy. And then you have reasons to believe it's not him. And I'm like, well, okay, so maybe it's not. But also I still think it is. And then it turned out it was, but I didn't guess why. And I definitely didn't guess that he had a partner. And that's the same with all the other movies. This one, I went into it and it was, like I said, as soon as certain characters were introduced, I knew exactly what the plot was. I knew exactly where they were going with it. And it was frustrating. That's
unfortunate.
Yeah. So, but you definitely feel the absence of Wes Craven in these new installments. But I also, like I said, I do think Scream 6 was a lot more fun. Like I think that the kill scenes and things were a lot more entertaining than in the last movie. So I think that there's definitely an improvement here. And I know one of your concerns was, the like the tagline was like, in this city, no one can hear you scream. And it was just like, it was annoying that, they were trying to say, oh, well, no one's going to know what's happening because it's New York, but they don't do that. So like, there's definitely like, there's stuff that happens in public places and people are paying attention. So
all right, good. I mean, I will admit that if I were standing on the subway and like someone in a ghost face mask walked by, I would just be like, all right. Like that is definitely a thing in New York, but less so of like someone running down the street screaming that someone else is trying to kill them.
Yeah.
And like most of the time someone will respond to that.
Yeah, so they definitely avoided that. So anyway, entertaining, but not a great whodunit mystery. And that's the thing about Scream, is that they're always kind of these slasher / whodunit movies, and it's not great at that part of it.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. But anyway, all right. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, watch more movies. And when you hear this, the Academy Awards will be over for the year. I'm actually very pleased, and I've said this on Twitter. I'm actually very pleased that I think there's only one Best Picture nominee that I'm just like, I really hope that doesn't win. All of the others, I'm just like, sure, why not? Like, and there are a few I haven't seen, so I'm not going to speak to those necessarily. But like all of the ones that I have seen, just like, I'd be fine with that. That'd be cool. Like, not bothered by it. I have some expectations, but I am very bad at predicting Oscars, so I have no clue.
I have seen all 10 of the Best Picture nominees. There are 2 that I hope don't win. But one of them, if it did, I could live with it. The other one, I'd be really mad. So, yeah.
And that's I have to say, that's unusual for me. Usually there are a couple of Best Picture nominees that I'm just like, fuck you and fuck your entire family. Like, that's...
It's a good lineup this year. Well, and that's the thing. Like, even the one that I'm like, I really don't want it to win, but if it did, I would live with it. It's like, it's not a bad movie. I just really don't prefer it. So it's a good lineup this year. There's so many categories that are so good. Even, I mean, my gosh, the shorts this year that are nominated are incredible. So
it's a very interesting grouping. I think that like, it's not just a good lineup, but there's a lot of unpredictability in it. I think there are a lot of very different, this has been true for the past couple of years. There are a lot of very different films and very different performances that have been nominated. And like, I think one of our themes over the past year or so has been, how can you compare these? How do you compare this performance with that one? These are 2 completely different films and completely different stories, and that's been nice. There hasn't been the same kind of, Oscar bait in quite the same way over the past few years.
This is all part of the changing Academy. When they started really expanding who is involved and who gets to be members of the Academy, we see so much more representation. It's still predominantly white men, but it's really shifted so much, and we're seeing that reflected in who gets nominated, and hopefully we'll also see that reflected in who actually wins too.
Well, I think that that's definitely been reflected in the past few years of the winners. And there've been issues, obviously, but I think that things are quite obviously changing. And that's a good thing. They're not changing fast enough, but they're definitely changing.
Right. Yeah. We're also going to be seeing some interesting things happen as a result of the Academy's diversity initiatives that they introduced a couple of years ago. I believe this year is the first year where the Best Picture nominees had to follow those specific rules of like, you had to have inclusion in multiple categories of like, not just who's on the screen, but who's behind the scenes, and also who markets the movies. I think this is the first year that those rules are actually in effect. So every film that was not, it's only for Best Picture, but every film that was nominated for Best Picture had to meet certain criteria of not just including women, but including women of color, including, people of color in every aspect from pre-production to marketing the movie.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, and I think that's a big part of why we're seeing the changes that we're seeing now too. So, yeah. So, all right.
Of course, next week we might be talking about how the Academy Awards are bullshit and how could they not award so and so and such and such. We probably will. Let's face it. There will be something.
There probably will. But one thing I am very, very confident on today, the day before the Oscars, is that Everything Everywhere All at Once is going to be your Best Picture winner.
I will buy that. Yeah.
Like it would actually be, and stats only count until they fall, and stats fall every year, but it would be absolutely unprecedented for a film to come in winning everything that it has won and then lose the Best Picture award. So,
well, we will find out tomorrow night.
We will, and I will be there. So next week I'll have a report from inside the press room.
Ooh, can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We really, really appreciate your support, your listening ears, and also your dollars. We want to thank the patrons who keep the show going. They are Ollie, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Heather, James, Judy, Kathleen, Carriata, Matt, Michelle, Monty, Nanina, Robert, Steve, Sharon, and Tao. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to also become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/citizendame and sign up. Being a patron means that you get early access to the episodes, you get full bonus episodes, and some other goodies along the way too. And you also just get to know that you're helping keep the show going, paying for hosting and helping keep the website up and all of that. So we really appreciate all of your support. We also do have our Zazzle store. There's nothing new on the Zazzle store, but it's always a good time to get a new t-shirt, right? So zazzle.com/citizendamepod and our Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/citizendame. We do also have the donate button on our website, which is at citizendamepod.com. And my review of Scream 6, I almost said Six Cream. My review of Scream 6 is there too. So you can check that out if you're looking for some new reading. We love to hear from people. You can email us, citizendamepod@gmail.com. And you can find us on the socials. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at citizendamepod. On Letterboxd, we are at citizendame. We do keep running lists of the films that we're talking about here. So if you're listening and you get to the end and you're like, oh shoot, what movies did they talk about? Or what was that one called again? You can go to our Letterboxd and look it up. We also we have not started using, but we do have a Mastodon account so that when Twitter inevitably dies, we're ready to go. And that is citizendamepod@mastodon.social. You can also... What?
I am predicting it tomorrow. Like I'm right now, just like Twitter's going to crash. It's not going to be able to handle it.
I don't know how it will handle the Oscars. I really don't. It'll be interesting to see. So hopefully it doesn't take the rest of us down with it. We'll see what happens. But yeah, every time Twitter doesn't work, I'm like, oh, this is it. It's over. And then it comes back and I'm like, okay, well, all right. Lives to see another day.
But a little bit worse. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Comes back, but a little bit worse.
It is so true. Well, Lauren, where can people find you on Twitter and all the other places?
I am on all of the socials at LH Business.
And I am at Karen M. Peterson. So thank you all so much for joining us. We will catch you next time.
Bye.
And the Oscar goes to Michelle Yeoh.
As a child, Michelle Yeoh studied to become a ballet dancer, and despite her illustrious career in action films, has no formal training in martial arts.
Thank you. Thank you for all the little boys and girls who look like me watching tonight. This is a beacon of hope and possibilities. This is proof that dreams dream big and dreams do come true. And ladies, don't let anybody tell you you are ever past your prime. Never give up.